Hey folks, welcome back to the Metal Mill 52 Workshop. My name is Bill, and this week's episode I'm going to talk about a project. This is kind of wrap up my Russ's projects. My good friend Russ has a Grizzly 12 by 36 lathe just like I do, and he made a bunch of neat little attachments for it. If you've been following along last several weeks, I've been posting about those. And the last one of the projects that he provided me the inspiration for was a a spindle lock, basically to lock the rotation of the three-jaw chuck in the lathe, which would be super handy for milling and drilling operations using the little self-contained drilling and grinding and milling spindle that I made in the last episode. So he gave me a bunch of parts and some drawings. Here's the drawings. He actually had a photograph of it that he texted me, and he has a wood cutting laser, so he cut out some templates for the lathe bed, the lathe ways. It's basically just a 45-degree angle, and then you get the depths right. So I don't want to go into the whole thing with the plans, but I did want to thank my friend Russ for the inspiration here. Let me show you what the finished product looks like. It's basically an aluminum block. You could use steel if you have it available. A locking plate on the bottom, a locking bolt, clamping bolt down here, and then a stand which I've made out of some scrap steel. These are actually little surplus stub axle rejects that from the machine shop that Russ used to work in. It's drilled and tapped 3/8/16 so that this is fastened. The stand basically is fastened to the block here, and then drilled and tapped 3/8/16 again here for a locking bolt, and then a piece of angle iron here that will clamp onto the top of the jaw. And the height of this, I measured it. I'll show in the video. I just measured it with a scale, a ruler, but I actually measured it with my calipers also, so I could be pretty precise. So I cut that, drilled and tapped both ends of it, and that's all there is to it. So it was a fun project. Took a few days of spare hobby time to complete. And if you'll stay with me for the next 20 minutes or so, you'll see how I machined this thing. So thank you again, Russ. And thanks again to all the new subscribers. I'm glad you're aboard. I appreciate that. And I hope that if you would, please, if you have a question, just ask me. If you don't have a question, but you'd like to show your interest or appreciation for the channel, just give me a thumbs up and let me know that you're there. And please pass the word to your friends that if you're into machining, or especially if they have a Grizzly 12 by 36 lathe and they're a hobbyist and they want to do projects and that kind of thing, please let them know, pass the word, and help me grow my channel. From here, I've got a whole bunch more projects ready to go, and they're back in the live Steam world, so I don't want to spoil it too much, but please stay tuned. Check out the next week episode. If you put on subscribe and you hit the notification button, you'll be notified when I post another video, which is typically about every week. So thanks again, everybody. I appreciate you. Welcome aboard to the new subscribers, and stay tuned for how to build one of these lathe locking devices. Getting ready to kick off what will be the final piece of the Russ's projects thing, and that is to make a clamp assembly for the lathe. It's not much good having a milling, drilling, grinding spindle if you can't clamp the jaws in place. So my friend Russ was generous enough to share with me his drawings. He has a Grizzly 12 by 36 lathe also, so he shared with me his drawings, which I printed out and made some notes about machining. And then of course, a lot of the things like this are kind of dictated by the raw materials you have around, and I had this nice piece of scrap metal, scrap aluminum, which is just about the perfect size. Wouldn't have broken my heart if it was just a little bit wider, but you know, you use what you have. So this will be mostly a mill project, and I'll be milling this today. Russ was kind enough to make me, he has a cool like wood cutting laser, and he was kind enough to share with me his templates that he used. He cut these things out in wood, and he's got a little cardboard one too that shows the actual profile of the lathe ways. So, and he also made, while he was at it, making knobs, a clamping knob. He made me an extra one too. So Russ, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Hopefully I'll be able to knock this out today. It's a little more involved in it than you might think. It involves machining this block mostly, then making a clamp plate on the bottom, and then of course I have the knob and making a little handle for the knob that and a stand that goes up here, and then a clamp on top that can clamp the jaws in place. So I should be able to knock it out, a lot of it this week, or I mean all of it this week, but for sure the block should be get done today. That's kind of my goal today. This is Labor Day of 2022. Knock out the block and hopefully the clamp plate, and then get the stand and clamp on top done. If I can get it done today, great. If not, then this week. Okay, I just spent a little time with my big shell end mill, and I milled it up, got the top and bottom flat and parallel to each other, and just marked out where the holes are going to go. I put a 3/8 inch 16 hole right here, another one in here, and then a couple of 832s down there. And then after all the holes are drilled and tapped, or at least the tap's begun, then I'll mill out the portion that fits around the lathe bed. I wanted to do the holes first while it's still relatively cube shaped, because it's a lot easier to grab in the mill that way. Now I've got the notch milled out. I used my same shell end mill. I could have cut it off with a bandsaw, but this is so much cleaner and only took a little bit longer. Now all I've got to do is notch out this 45 degree. I'll show you the setup for that in a minute. After taking out the notch with the large shell end mill, I'm using another end mill here to add a 45 degree angle plate. I'll use that to set this up, and just made the requisite notch this way. Milled it out to my sketch, so now is the time I get to take it out and check it out and see how it fits on the lathe. There's a little foundation block, if you will, excuse me, for the clamp, and I got it milled out so it fits nicely. I did have to relieve a little bit on this side here, and as you can see, I've got a line level on one of the jaws of the 3-jaw chuck here. So I've got it leveled. I know this is not perfectly accurate like a Starrett. I do have some Starrett levels and stuff, but they're way too big to fit on there. So the device will be adjustable, and the main idea is that it locks the lathe in place. So what I'm doing now, I've got it set here, and I've just used an ordinary scale ruler to measure the distance here. It's just under 5 inches from the top to here. So I just wanted to do that before, because there will be a little bit of lathe work involved, but having the measurement is 4 7/8 in this particular case. Of course, it's all gonna, for you, it would all depend on how how big your block is and so forth. But 4 7/8 would be a good starting place for me for a nice adjustable stand that can get clamped on there. And on the bottom, I've machined, drilled and tapped a 3/8 16 hole that'll be for the clamp, and then I've got two 832 holes that I've drilled and tapped here for basically just stabilizing pieces that will keep my clamping plate on the bottom in place. Alright, with the base done and the column done, you can see it's just the right height to block up underneath the jaws of the 3-jaw, and I've drilled and tapped it for 3/8 16 on the end, and about to cut. This is a piece of angle iron, but it's not conventional angle iron. It's actually from a bed frame that I salvaged from the trash from a neighbor that was throwing it out. So I've slowly but steadily been using it up, and this is the perfect use for something like this. The stuff is tough. As you can see, I've already drilled an oversized hole in there to allow for a little adjustability, but it'll sit on top here, and then it'll be clamped down with this 3/8 16 clamp bolt. Okay, it don't look like much sitting there, but it was a time-consuming project, especially machining and fitting the bottom lock plate. And just to show you Russ's design, as a matter of fact, he gave me this nice little aluminum kind of thimble looking thing for a screw on the bottom. Honestly, Russ, what I think I'm going to do is stick with these socket head cap screws and just leave the same one at the top as I have at the bottom to loosen it. And it's just going to work out better that way for me. Taking it, let me loosen this up, see if I can do this one-handed. This will be interesting. Okay, loosen the top. You know, and as I've said, I mean, as long as it holds the thing in place, that's the objective. So, loosen this a little bit. Tricky part is part of the reason I wanted to demonstrate this is a clever design on Russ's part to have a couple little screws in there that will retain the bottom lock plate for you, and that's what I've emulated that design as well. Let me see if I can, there we go, get it off. So you can see what I've got on the bottom there. And what I should have done, Russ's plans originally, his drawings, had these screws further out, like only 1/4 of an inch from the end. And that's what I should have done. I put them 3/8 of an inch in from either side, and they interfered with the little thimble thing. So that gave me the idea just to use the socket head cap screw, and because I needed to use something at the top as well. So long story short, I've decided to just stick with that that design. But this is going to be very, very handy. It's going to be essential really for any of the operations where I would use my grinding, milling, drilling spindle. So thank you, Russ. I appreciate the design and inspiration, and I look forward to using this thing and enjoy it very much. Thanks again.